everyone. A very warm welcome to you all on this fine day. I'm pleased to welcome you to the fourth session of the Women in Product Summit 2024. The Women in Product Summit, hosted by the Product Leaders Forum in partnership with the Institute of Product Leadership, presents a dynamic platform where you can share your journey, exchange insights, acquire wisdom from some extraordinary leaders, and feel inspired to collectively push boundaries. Our aim is to challenge conventional leadership norms, awaken your inner potential, and shape a future that resonates with your ambitions. My name is Harleen, and I'm your host for this session. The summit consists of 3 weeks of immersive online sessions, building up to the grand finale of the in person conference on the 7th of April here in Whitefield, Bangalore. We will be hearing from an array of inspirational women from all walks of life during the upcoming online sessions, culminating with a one of a kind experience at our in person conference. Today's session is going to be delivered by the remarkable Miss Sowmya Rajendran, a writer, editor, and journalist on breaking stereotypes and reimagining careers. As mentioned, we will be conducting multiple virtual sessions over the course of the next couple of weeks. Our next session, which is scheduled for day after tomorrow, which is Thursday evening, will be led by the inspiring Miss Sirisha Tekuru, who is the Senior Principal Product Manager at Paytm. The cherry on top of it all is the grand finale of the in-person conference that will take place on the 7th of April in Bangalore. Our featured speakers, some of whom are visible on your screen, are all inspirational women who will share actionable perspectives on careers, products, and current challenges. The day promises to be a power-packed day and a unique experience that is designed to equip professionals with essential tools and knowledge for excellence in the professional landscape. You can find the link to the website for the conference in the chat window. Make sure to register for the same to secure your spot at this exclusive conference. That was a little overview about the summit and its mission. Before I start today's insightful session, I'd like to give you a quick introduction to the host of the summit, the Product Leaders Forum. The Product Leaders Forum is a volunteer-powered, non-profit organization that is crafted by practitioners for practitioners. With a global footprint encompassing chapters in Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, and the Silicon Valley, it's a movement that is dedicated to product leadership. The forum's mission is to cultivate a vital and distinctive platform for product leaders worldwide. Through fostering diverse viewpoints and fostering rich dialogue on product thinking, the forum aims to catalyze mindset shifts, unlock profound insights, and offer hands-on learning opportunities to enhance skills. The summit is being organized by the Product Leaders Forum in partnership with the Institute of Product Leadership. The Institute of Product Leadership is Asia's first business school providing accredited degree programs and certification courses in product management, product leadership, data science, design, strategy, and leadership. The institute has partnered with multiple universities and was founded in 2012 with a singular mission of creating 10,000 product leaders in the country. Ever since, the organization has designed and delivered programs in collaboration with various institutes, universities, and corporates to the senior working professionals to help them make career transitions into product leadership. The institute has also built and developed a community of over 3,700 successful alumni, leading the product, data, and design teams across the world. We're also knowledge partners for 250 plus organizations worldwide. You can find out more about the institutes and the programs offered on our website. You can find the link for the same in the chat window. And for those of you who've joined us via LinkedIn, you can find the link in the comments section. Today's session is on breaking stereotypes and reimagining careers, where our speaker Sowmya will be sharing her inspiring career journey. Once our speaker for tonight presents her insights, we'll open up for questions. Please keep your questions ready. You can ask the questions on Zoom in the Q&A section. This session is also being streamed live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So, viewers on any of these channels, please feel free to post your questions in the comment section and we'll share them with the speaker. Here is some exciting news for all the attendees tonight. You have the opportunity to win a free digital course. The best asked question in tonight's session will get this reward. You can find a link in the chat where you can find the array of digital learning courses offered by the Institute of Product Leadership. The courses offered are new age skills courses that for every step of your career. Every course is also built, curated, and designed by industry practitioners. The winner for today's session will get to pick a course of their choice. Do not miss out on this opportunity, guys. Not only do you get to engage with our distinguished speaker, but you also stand a chance to win a digital learning course. All right, then, without further ado, let me kickstart this session by introducing and welcoming our distinguished speaker for today, Ms. Sowmya Rajendran. Sowmya is an Indian author with more than 25 books to her credit. She was awarded the Sahitya Akademi's Bal Sahitya Puraskar in 2015 for her novel. Her non-fiction book on gender was chosen as an honor book at the Hindu Young World Good Books Awards in 2016. Currently, Sowmya works as an independent journalist for Film Companion, The News Minute, and Money Control. She was previously the features editor with The News Minute, writing on gender, culture, and cinema. She was also associate editor with Chandamama's Children magazines. Pleased to welcome you today, Sowmya.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
I'd also like to introduce and welcome our facilitator for today's session, Ms. Soumini. Soumini is a product leader with more than 2 decades of experience in product R&D and product management, spanning banking, retail, deep tech, and healthcare domains. She's currently working as a senior software manager at Baxter Healthcare, leading the product engineering division of Baxter's digital health portfolio. Soumini is an avid blogger, writer, and storyteller. She has been recognized as one of the top voices on product management on LinkedIn. Pleased to welcome you as well this evening, Soumini.
Thanks, Halim.
Okay, great. Without further ado, the session is now both of yours.
Thank you so much. So, hello, Sowmya. Welcome to the Women in Product Summit 2024. It's a pleasure to have you with us this evening.
Thank you, Soumya. I'm glad to be here.
So, Sowmya, you have interviewed so many leaders and celebrities in media, political, film fraternity. So, how does it feel to be on the other side, to be on the celebrity seat now?
Well, I have been interviewed as well previously because as a children's writer. So it's always a joy for me to share my thoughts and to interact with people, and yeah, so I enjoy it.
Thank you, Sowmya. I have been following your journey so closely all these years. So when we were discussing the topics for this summit, when we zeroed in on breaking stereotypes and reimagining careers, the first name that came to my mind was you. So in today's conversation, we want to explore your world, your career journey, and truly understand what it means to chart one's own path. I will call it a discovery dialogue.
Okay. Yeah.
So to begin with, let's start from the beginning. As you know, as kids growing up in India in the 1980s and 90s, engineering or medicine were the default options. We have been conditioned to aspire for one of these, right? You chose arts in graduation. So how did you manage to break free from this conditioning? And what did the future look like at that point in time?
So not only was it the norm back then for everybody to do engineering and medicine, I also had a brother who was considered a kind of genius in the sciences. So he's currently a theoretical physicist at Johns Hopkins. So there was immense pressure on me to follow the science course because he's older than I am, and he had kind of, he was considered a trailblazer in school. And a lot of my teachers were very disappointed that I was choosing the arts because the arts back then, it was considered, it was considered to be a lesser thing. So only children who did not study well or who couldn't cope with the sciences, these were the kind of kids who were assigned to the arts. So a lot of my teachers were very disappointed with my choice, and they did ask me, why don't you do science? But from a very young age, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be a writer. I used to write poetry, and I was a big reader, and I wanted to do and I wanted to write because I wanted to give that joy to somebody else. What I learned from books, and by learning, I don't mean knowledge per se, but just my worldview, how it was shaped, and writing for me is a form of articulating many things to myself, things that are not clear enough in my head. When I write it, I it's a way for me to communicate with myself. So it's a deeply personal thing, and I greatly enjoyed it. And I was very clear that this is what I wanted to do. Thankfully, in my house, my parents were quite open to the idea of me pursuing the arts, even though there was a little bit of pressure to study math in high school, though I had the option of not doing it and so on. But since they supported my decision, it was not too much of an uphill task. And most of my friends all of my friends actually did go for engineering and medicine. But I knew in my heart that I wouldn't be happy if I took that life. And so I decided to become a writer. And I did my BA in English from Stella Maris College. Of course, if you want to be an engineer, you know that you need to study engineering. Or if you want to be a doctor, you know that you need to study medicine. But there is no clear course for for somebody who wants to be a writer, because you can be from any field and you can become a writer, right? How does one become a writer? That question was something that I did not know the answer to back then. But I knew that I wanted to read and I wanted to study literature. So that's why I did my BA in English at that point. Yeah.
So that's great clarity at that point in your life. And I would say to be an engineer is not why we do engineering. It's actually people who are clueless what to do in life take up engineering. Just my personal take there. Yeah. So I would say, to make matters worse, you took up gender studies for your post-graduation.
Yes.
What really is gender studies and why that? And did you have something in mind specifically?
Yeah, so I have made a habit of specializing in vague subjects that a lot of people look down upon, it looks like. So I'll tell you how I decided to do gender studies. It's because in my BA English course, we had this paper on philosophy, which taught us the evolution of thought, of human thought. So we learned a wide variety of philosophical thoughts, Marxism, existentialism, and so on. And one ideology that we learned about was feminism. And it was like somebody had switched on a light in my brain. So many questions I had about the world, so many questions I had about my life, so many frustrations, anger, confusions. It all made sense. So I never had the answer for why so many things were happening and why I was reacting like that to those things. And feminism was the framework that taught me that my anger is justified and that I can channelize it. And that it is okay to look at the world from this perspective. And it is okay not to conform. And it is okay to break the norms and break the stereotypes. So I found that very illuminating, and it benefited me a whole lot. And that also significantly influenced my writing. I learned that you don't have to follow how books have been written so long, and you can move away from that. You can think like a woman, and it's okay to think like a woman. So I wanted to dig deeper. And that's when I discovered that there is a course that actually helps you do this, and that was MA in gender studies. At that time, India did have women's studies departments, but I wanted to I was very insistent that I do gender studies because it's the curriculum is not the same. And then I found out the University of Sussex had a very good department, and that's how I decided to do my master's in gender studies. Again, my parents had no idea what gender studies was or any of this. My mother was not in favor of me doing a very vague course like this because she said, you're going abroad, and the tuition fee is high, and then what job will you get at the end of it? That is actually a very good question, which I appreciate more as a parent now. But at that point, for me, it was like, look, this is what I'm passionate about. This, and I want to pursue something that I'm passionate about, because if I'm not interested in something, I'm going to be very bad at doing it. I should also acknowledge here that I did have the privilege of following my passion. Not everybody does. There are many people who, right after their graduation, they have to support their, families. For me, my parents did not come from privileged homes. They came from, poor homes, or very lower middle class, at least. My father did not have electricity till he was in his BA. So they understood the value of money. They knew that it's not so easy to earn a livelihood when you do a fancy course like this, that you need something to hold on to. But still, they were willing to trust me with my decision. And yeah, so then I applied and I got in, and I left to do my master's in gender studies.
Very inspiring. Thanks for sharing, Sowmya. So how was it beyond your education? How did you take up? Is there any guidance you got to be a writer? What were those steps that you took?
For me, I would say my peer group was very helpful. My peer group from Stella Maris, we were a bunch of young women, very opinionated, very vocal about our views. And we formed this small writing circle in college where we used to share our work and, discuss ideas. And one of my friends from college, her name is Nivedita Subramaniam. The two of us used to go to Landmark Bookshop in Chennai. It's no longer there, but we used to. It isn't very far from my college, so we used to go there and we used to read books together. And that's how I discovered a whole lot of new children's books that had arrived on the scene. So for me, talking with these women and being able to share my work with them was very helpful. There were also my professors from college who were quite helpful in giving feedback. And back in college, I also started a blog. So blogging was all the rage back then, and I used to write. I had a pen name, and I used to write very frank and honest views about everything on it. From my college to world views and cinema and so on. And that blog became really popular. So then I developed a readership. Uh, and these were complete strangers, people I did not know, who were reading and liking my work. So that kind of gave me the confidence that, yes, my writing appeals to people, and that I can, I do have a command over this skill. So that also influenced me a lot in making me the writer that I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I think back in those days, blogging used to be like a training ground or an experimentation ground wherein you can grow
Yes.
your audience. You can write as you please.
Yeah, quite a few writers have come from blogging actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I read your books, Sowmya, be it children's fiction or young adults books, you have boldly broken stereotypes. You write about stories where there is no superhero rescuing the women in distress. There is open talk about adolescence, things like that. So how is it being received in today's world? Especially, you've given a lot of talks in schools, right? So how is it being received by children and their parents?
Yeah, so one of the reasons, prime reasons I wanted to write for children is because when I was doing my master's in gender studies, there's a lot that I learned, but I realized that much of this was very jargon heavy. And there was a lot of terminology, a lot of theorizing, which isn't accessible to everybody. And I thought about how my life would have been different if I had known all this while I was growing up. If I had discovered so many things about the world, about about perspectives and looking at things from a different angle, how there would have been so many struggles that would have been way easier if I had all this information. So when I was writing books for children, this is what I wanted to do with it. I didn't just want to. So when we grew up, we would have moral stories where there would be a story and then the moral would be written right there at the end, kind of blocking your thought. So the writer has told you already what to think. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted children to ask questions. I wanted them to think for themselves. So that is what I wanted to create with my books. Another important thing for me to do was to break taboos in my stories. I wanted to talk to children. I wanted to have honest conversations with children about growing up and adolescence. So that's something we never got while growing up, right? So my mother used to leave women's magazines in my room, hoping that I would flip through it and find answers to the big questions in life. But we never really had these open conversations because it is hard for parents to talk about a lot of things like sexuality, how your body is changing, the challenges that come with growing up. So I wanted my books to always to also be conversation starters between parents and children. So one of my books is Mail Will Not Be Quiet, which won the Sahitya Akademi's award. I co-wrote the book with Nivedita, whom I mentioned earlier. The two of us initially came up with the idea for the book as a resource book on gender that teachers could use in a classroom to talk to children about various issues. And we had written the first draft of the book and we sent it to all the publishers in the country. Every single publisher that we could find online, we looked at their manuscript guidelines and we wrote and sent it to them. And we didn't hear back from any of them. So finally, we heard back from Tulika, publishers in Chennai. And they suggested that we rewrite the book in the form of a diary so that it's so that you don't need a teacher to talk to children about this and children can read it themselves and understand it. And we thought that was a good idea because first, who's going to train the teachers, right? So you need sensitized teachers to teach things like gender. So we thought it was a good idea and we rewrote the whole manuscript in the form of a diary. And that book did lead to controversies, but we also received a whole lot of love from children as well as adults. Now, by controversies, I mean there were people who objected to the fact that we had talked about sex openly. From the point of view of a 10-year-old girl who wonders what this is. What is this thing that people are talking about? So she gets her period in the book. And how does she deal with that? So things like that uh, were, were not commonly found in Indian children's books back then. So we were nervous when we published the book because nobody had tried something like this, and we were unsure of the reception. But I must say that we were really surprised by how many children directly took to the book and identify it closely with the book. I've received emails, children making fan art of Mail, telling us that they resonate so much with her. So that is a very rewarding aspect of my life as a children's writer.
Very refreshing to hear this, Sowmya. I think it's quite relevant in today's context. I also like the fact that you choose very Indian names or maybe South Indian names for the characters. Yeah, that's something we are not used to. Yeah.
Yes, so that is, I feel that being culture specific is very important as a writer. And I feel that I read a lot of stories written by children as well. And most of those stories are written by, are set in the US or the UK, because they cannot imagine exciting things or adventures happening in their own backyard, because they simply haven't read literature that represents that experience. So they think it is impossible for that to happen. I used to do that too as a writer. As a writer, as a child writer, so I also used to set my stories in some island in Britain, because that's what I was reading. So it seemed impossible for me that somebody could eat a dosa and have an exciting life. It was as if you had to eat turkey sandwich for you to, catch a robber or do something adventurous like that. So yes, I set all my books in the local.
Yeah, it is years of conditioning that has to be undone, and you are starting with the young minds. So that's a great start, definitely. So Sowmya, in the Indian context, what do you think are the challenges that women writers face when compared to men? Are there challenges like pay parity or any other kind of discrimination that you think?
Well, I wouldn't say discrimination as such. See, the challenge for not just Indian women writers, but women writers in general, I would say are two. One is for you to own your time and have the space for you to create stories. And the second is, what sort of stories are you telling and are they considered valuable? So the first thing, there's this line I read from Virginia Woolf's A Room of Unzown, a book that I read in college, where she says, a woman needs money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. And that line struck a very powerful chord with me, because nobody until then had really spoken to me about making a livelihood as a writer. And can it be done? And why is it necessary for you to be financially independent if you're going to be a writer, a woman writer specifically? So, as I read more, I realized that if you want to be free mentally, you also need financial freedom. If you want to call your time your own, if you want to make that bubble in your life where nobody can disrupt your work, then you need to have that amount of power and control over your life. So that's what Wolf was talking about when she said when she said that women need money and a room of their own, a space of their own for them to write. Now, as somebody who's been writing for so many years, I know that this is very difficult to achieve for women writers. There are constant interruptions, constant calls on your time. From it could be, housework, it could be childcare, it could be your day job that you have to do to support yourself. Because most writers do not make enough money to pay their bills. So if it is important for you to also be financially independent, then you need to straddle a day job along with your writing career. So so some writers do make peace with the fact that they are financially dependent on somebody, and others don't. So this is a choice that you have to make. What gives you peace, and what are you able to achieve as a woman writer? Secondly, the question of, are women's stories considered valuable? There is this category called chick lit, right? Which is where you have women protagonists, and the stories are of simply their lives, and there's nothing very hugely important. And it is a kind of a derogatory term, because chick lit is not considered to be high literature, because women's experiences are not considered to be important enough. So, is a story about war more important than a story about a mother dealing with the newborn? So, these are questions that readers have to answer. And throughout history, there have been women who've changed their name. They've put male names on the book cover, because the readers are more likely to pick up a book written by a man than a woman. And that is true even now. You see somebody like J.K. Rowling. She did not use her full name in, on the cover of Harry Potter for the same reason. And when she started writing detective fiction as well, she used a male name. Because even though we have an Agatha Christie, male detective fiction is still considered to be better than female detective fiction, because men are supposed to be better at crime and understanding psychology and so on. These are just a lot of assumptions and stereotypes in the minds of readers. So there are difficulties like this that exist. And yeah, but I think women writers are growing in number. Most top editors at publishing houses, even in India, are women. So there is a space that is being created for women's writing. And yeah, I would say that things are moving in a more positive direction now, because there's a lot more awareness among people about gender and the kind of stereotyping that happens. Yeah.
But I also see that when we look in today's world, content creation itself has a different definition. People are looking at more short-term content, attention span is less. So even bloggers I have seen have kind of left blogging. They choose, expressing themselves in a very few characters or through pictures, Instagram, right? So even though the world has changed for women writers, do you think this trend is going to be detrimental when it comes to long form writing?
Yes, world over, publishing houses are facing difficulties, especially during the pandemic when the sales of hard copies were very badly hit. So yes, readers are, the attention span is going down. There is a trend towards what is known as fast fiction, where very plot centric and not enough uh, details and characterization or things like that. But I would say the audience for literary, something like literary fiction, has always been small. And but there is always that audience. There is always an audience for literature that continues to exist. Now, I primarily write children's books, and when it comes to children's books, whether parents read or not, they want their children to read. So there they are always trying to introduce children's books to to their kids, trying to encourage a love for reading. So there, I wouldn't say that there is a decline. In fact, the sales are going up for children's books.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So Soumya, you don several hats. So a journalist, a writer, editor, film critic. Of all of these, the film critic part of it really is very interesting. I just want to understand, how did you land up there? Was it like by accident? And how is it going now?
Yeah, so I never planned on becoming a film critic, though I grew up watching a lot of movies, both in Tamil and Malayalam. I'm a Malayali who grew up in Chennai, so I watched movies from both the cultures and both the industries. After my master's in gender studies, I started writing about films from a feminist perspective, from a gender perspective. And this wasn't something that a lot of people were doing back then. This is around 2010, 2011. There were not many people were doing this, especially when it came to Southern cinema, Tamil and Malayalam industries. And I first started writing for this platform called Sifi, which had an entertainment section. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of backlash for the kind of things that I used to write, because people were like, "It's just a movie. Why can't you just enjoy the movie? Why do you have to ruin everything for us? How dare you speak this way about our actor?" I remember one of the pieces for which I got a lot of abuse was this Malayalam film Drishyam, which was subsequently remade in several languages, including Hindi. And I had pointed out how the honor of the entire family is tied to that girl's body. I'm sure most people here are familiar with the film. This is a film where a murder is committed and the entire family tries to cover up the incident. And the reason for the murder is that the daughter of the house is filmed without her consent while she's taking a bath. So I felt that the film could have handled that more sensitively, considering the weight that women have to carry when it comes to family and honor. So back then, nobody was willing to accept this view, even though since then the discourse around Drishyam has grown a lot. And recently, Jeetu Joseph, the director of the film, he made another film called Nere, which is also about the sexual assault of a woman. And there he had completely repositioned this. And there he said, the women of today will not keep quiet for such incidents and so on. So you can see that the director himself has changed his view. But back then when I was writing these things, there was a lot of opposition to it, a lot of fan abuse and so on. But I persisted in doing this because I know that in our country, cinema is an extremely influential medium. I know that it reaches a very wide section of society. And I felt it was important to write from these perspectives. And after a while, you just get used to the abuse. So I was quite hardened to it. And I also found that I did have an audience for my writing. A lot of women read what I was writing and resonated with it. And subsequently, I joined the News Minute, where I continued to write on cinema from these perspectives, and that's how my career as a film critic began.
Yeah, I have personally read a lot of these negative comments on your writings. I've always wondered, how do you handle them? Isn't it intimidating for you?
Yes, initially it used to bother me because I used to think, why are they so angry? Because I said something about a film. It's just a perspective, right? And as a literature student, this was something I was very used to doing, because for me, a work of art becomes more important when people are discussing it and there are various readings of it. So we don't, when we study literature, it's not that we take a play written by Shakespeare and we just write, oh, this is great, this is wonderful, this is brilliant. No, you look at it from different perspectives, right? You look at it from where it is set, what kind of era was it, what was the moral code of society, how is gender represented in the text, and there are so many angles from which we discuss a work of art. And that's what I was attempting to do with cinema. But clearly, a lot of people, especially men, did not appreciate this at all. And they would come after me and not even bothering to engage with what I had written. It would just be an outright rejection. And this used to bother me a lot. I used to take it personally. I've lost sleep over it, definitely. But after a while, I just became inured to it, and I was like, if you have something constructive to say, I will engage with you. If you have something constructive to say in polite language, I'll engage with you more. Otherwise, you're not worth my time. I don't have to give people that kind of mind space. So, and I realized that if I want to survive in this industry, if I want to continue writing, I can't let this get to me. So once I made that decision in my mind, I started finding online abuse to be largely amusing. And that's how I got past it.
Great. The reason for asking this question also is, most of us, when we go through our career, we do face a lot of challenges. We are in the midst of a lot of politics. So we kind of get affected by it. We take it personally. We do not know how to move on. So I think this perspective really helps, because we need to define whose words really matter. What do we want to engage with?
Yeah. Absolutely, yes.
So while we are on the topic of controversial aspects, some of the audience here, or most of them, are from the corporate world. We hear a lot of engagement around the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion. So what's your take on that, and on women empowerment? You spoke about your feminist views, but just wanted to get your take on these.
I feel DEI is often seen as a burden, whereas people should be looking at what are you getting out of DEI. Now, personally, I worked in a newsroom as a full-time editor for about 7 years. And we had a DEI policy when it came to hiring. And I would say that that greatly benefited the newsroom, because there were just so many perspectives that you gain when you interact with people from different walks of life, from different social identities. Now, I'll give you a simple example in a corporate setup. Recently, Zomato rolled out its pure veg option, right? Riders who will deliver pure veg wearing green uniforms. Now, this was something that the CEO announced on Twitter. And within 24 hours, they rolled it back. And this was because a lot of people on Twitter told them that there was a practical difficulty. Forget about the whether it is I'm not even getting into the, whether it is okay for you to give pure veg in pure veg boxes. I'm not even getting into that. But just the practical difficulty. What if I am a tenant living in a society where there is a certain bias towards people who eat meat? What if I'm in a society where the RWA imposes rules like you cannot eat meat during Navratri or whatever? What if your rider gets attacked? by people holding these views. So these were practical difficulties that people brought up on a democratic social media platform where there are voices from every community speaking up. So this was something that had not occurred to anybody at Zomato, apparently, before they started something like this, right? So how do you make a big announcement like this? How can the CEO wear a green uniform, post for it on Twitter, and then roll it out and then roll it back in 24 hours? That's because you haven't listened to the views of everybody. So I feel that corporate setups also benefit hugely from different perspectives. So when we are listening, otherwise what you're creating is an chamber, right? You're not listening to enough people. So as an editor, I was a features editor with the News Minute, and I had reporters from different walks of life. People, some of them couldn't even write a proper sentence in English properly. But does that mean that they were useless, or does that mean that the extra work I had to do to edit their copies, did I resent it? No. I feel that it really benefited me as a person personally also, because I learned so much from their reporting, from their on-ground reporting. And when people come from different walks of life, they are also passionate about telling those stories. So that's how you get, news that you should value. So I feel DEI is important, and it shouldn't be just seen as a woke, consequence that everybody has to put up with. If you want to create a level playing field, if you want an office where there is true diversity and where everybody's views are respected and where your policies are also influenced positively by this, I feel you should be open to it.
Yeah, so it's beyond the statistics. This much
Yes.
percentage of women versus men. It's about what you do to
Yes.
make the environment inclusive.
Yes, and speaking of women, I worked in a media house which is headed by a woman, and most of our editors were women. So how did this influence us when a story like the Me Too movement broke out? We were pioneers in setting the narrative around that movement. Why is it? Because a lot of journalists simply did not understand how to deal with something like this. Many of them were just like, why did these women not speak up back then? Why are they talking now? And they kind of did this inquisition on women who were speaking up. So we did a lot of work sensitizing our own colleagues, in the field. We did a lot of work in putting out explainers on why this is important and so on. So this was possible only because I came from such a newsroom where the majority of us were female. So again, I know there is a lot of resistance to women employees, because everybody assumes that, yeah, you'll just get married and you'll have a baby and you'll quit and that's the end of it. There's a lot of resentment when it comes to legal rights like paid maternity leave. But again, if you want, it's not that women, the only contribution they can make to the world is through their uterus. No, women have a lot to offer. So you need to open your eyes to that. People in positions of leadership need to understand that women bring a lot more to the table. And if you make their lives easier, if you offer them the support that they need, then your organization will truly benefit from that.
Very sensible advice that I've heard in the recent times. So Sowmya, you are doing so many things, so many roles. So I am just curious to understand what does a day in your life look like?
Well, a day in my life definitely begins with a cup of tea. I cannot function without it. I take care of my cat. I take him out for a walk on the terrace. I make stuff for my daughter. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I exercise for at least an hour every morning, because I also believe in taking care of myself. That is very important to me. Self care is very big on my list of priorities. I also do a bit of housework. I'm married to a partner who believes in doing 50-50 when it comes to home and work. And then I sit down to write. I now work as a freelance journalist, so I know what I'm going to do each day. So I work on my writing for about 2 to 3 hours. and then I take a break, get back to writing. And yeah, then after I pick my daughter up from school, I spend time with her. I watch stuff that I have to catch up with because I need to be in touch with pop culture for me to continue writing my articles. And I definitely read every day before going to bed. I feel if you want to write, you have to read. So it's like watering a plant. If you want the writing to grow, you definitely have to read.
And you also go to movie theaters alone to watch movies so that
Yes,
you
of
can...
course, of course. So that happens on every Friday. I go to watch movies. So this is something I started back in college, going alone for movies because I used to love watching horror films and thrillers, and not many of my friends were fond of the genre. So one fine day, I just decided I'm tired of waiting for people to say yes to a movie invite. So I just decided to go by myself and see what happens. Because I didn't tell my parents I was going alone. I used to tell them I'm going with at least five, six others. And I used to go and I greatly enjoyed the experience. I found it to be very peaceful, not having to wait for anybody. I could watch right from the advertisements and the trailers until the end of the movie. And I could think without anyone talking to me. I hated when people talk to me in the middle of a movie. So that's something I started doing from a very young age, and it so happened that I ended up doing that as a career. So there have been many times when I've been the only person in the theater, and that doesn't bother me at all. So the people who come to give the snacks are, they're a little appalled to find this strange lady sitting all by herself in the theater and watching a movie. But I really enjoy it.
Great. The reason to ask this question also is most of us complain about lack of time. So I just wanted to bring in this thought that all of us have the same 24 hours. So how the lives differ by the way we shape it, by the way we prioritize and bring in these activities.
Yes, but I also want to add that I want women to understand that not everything is an individual battle. Often the reason you're finding it very difficult to do things is because it is systemic. If you do not have a supportive work culture, if you come from a patriarchal home, if you're in a relationship that is not equal, it's not so easy to do everything by yourself. So that's what a lot of women end up doing. They have the weight of the world on their shoulders, and then they blame themselves for not doing enough. So you have to choose your battles, and you also have to know that many a time it's not your fault. It's because the world is not designed for you. The culture that we have to survive in was not designed for you. It was designed for men who have a wife at home to take care of everything. So if we all had such a wife, then we would go out and live our fullest life. But that's not possible, right? So often you are swimming against the tide, and I think it's good to pause and acknowledge that and appreciate yourself for how much you're able to do. So there's no sense in beating yourself up. I feel like you should live up to your potential, but be kind to yourself.
Sure. So for people who are looking to build their own path, it is a strenuous journey. It's full of risks and challenges, right? So do you think it's really worth taking that kind of a path when there are safer choices available today?
So that's a question that each person has to answer for themselves. And I also feel that once you've taken a path, there is no need for you to stick to it also. You can also change your path. There are many people who do that, especially engineers. Since you said at the beginning of the talk, there's so many people I meet, they're stand-up comedians, they are directors, they are musicians. I ask them, okay, so how did you start? And they say, oh, I was an engineer. And then, I decided to change course. So many of us are afraid to do something that others around us are not doing because it seems risky, it seems unsafe, and also when you're very young, you may not have that clarity about what you want to do. So you end up doing, and there's a lot of social pressure. So in India, we place a lot of importance on obedience when it comes to children. So a good child is an obedient child. It's not a child who questions or talks back to their parents. And I think this attitude somehow makes us conform lifelong that you have to listen, you have to obey. But that's not necessary. So this is something I tell my daughter also, that I don't value obedience as a quality. I encourage her to be a disruptor, to ask me questions, to disagree, fight, argue. All these are very good qualities. And this will really help you in your workplace also and figuring out what you need for yourself. So I would say that it's never too late for anyone to explore what they want to do. So that moment can come to you at any time in life. So I know girls who studied with me in college back then, who had to find jobs immediately after graduation because that was their family situation. They needed to become a teacher after doing a BA in English. So there's no sense in telling them, oh, why didn't you follow your path? Why didn't you become a singer? Or why didn't you? So each person has to decide for themselves, depending on their circumstances, what they wish to do. But but this decision need not be written in stone. It can be something that you change. And you shouldn't be afraid of making that change when the right moment comes.
Yeah. So what typically happens is, you took the example of engineers, any profession for that matter, we start without having a clue of where we want to reach. Then money becomes a priority, early on in life. So we think, like you said, women need to have money and, freedom or a room that she can sit and write in. So as we prioritize money, I think money doesn't leave us at all. So we end up chasing money and fame, whatever. So we are unable to break that relationship with money. And then we see that if we choose an unconventional career path, the money that we are looking for is not available. So that is a constraint I think many people face in not being able to make decisions.
Absolutely. And money is a very important factor when it comes to people deciding their career path. Now, we're talking about women. The pressure on men is even more because they are only recognized by their role as a provider. So, when we speak of patriarchy, patriarchy oppresses men as well as women. It oppresses people of all genders. So, many men are stuck in the role of the provider. They are not able to pursue their passions, their interests, because for them, they feel like they will not be respected if they're not providing for the family. So, what I have learned from pursuing a career in the arts is that there is no guarantee that you will, once you do your BA in English or your masters in music, that you will make it. So that confidence, you can have trust in yourself, but there is no guarantee. So you need to be open to the idea that you need to do other things in life to pay your bills. So I worked in a media house for 6 7 years. It was a 6 day work week, and the news cycle never ends. So I worked from like 9:30 to like 11 in the night. I worked through the pandemic. So I have done all these things, and I have also kept my writing career growing because it was important for me. So I don't want to give false hope to people and say that, you will definitely make this much if you follow your heart. But I would say that if you prioritize yourself, then lifelong you should also make that little space in your life to do what you want to do when you're able to do it. And that comes from a continued love for whatever art you wish to pursue, whether it is photography or music or writing. So having money also enables you to do these things. I think we should also recognize that. So when you have made a certain amount, when you have certain savings, when you can afford to pay for a writing class, or when you can afford to buy an expensive camera for yourself, that is also important. Money is giving you all that. So I think we need to recognize that as well. So getting into the arts and pursuing a career is not easy. It comes with its own risks, and you should be prepared to have a double career, build this and another thing along with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Sowmya, what's your advice to the younger generation, maybe your daughter and kids of that age? So what do you think they should look at when they plan their future?
I think the number one thing is that they should think for themselves. and make decisions for themselves. I think decision making is a very important skill that young people need. And I think they should feel proud of themselves for questioning the status quo. And I think a lot of young kids today are feeling empowered enough to do that. I think they are learning to stand up for themselves. And, so I feel when they make choices, they should be, especially young girls, I feel they should put themselves first. And that's something we didn't hear enough as we were growing up. As women, we are always expected to put the family ahead of us, put what society thinks ahead of us. What will people say is probably the one line that we've all grown up hearing. And I think it's time that we shut that line out of our lives. That's something I tell my daughter a lot. It doesn't matter what people think. What matters the most is what you think. So I think we should, that's one thing we should, gift them the power to think and decide for themselves.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think most of us in corporate, we are stuck somewhere in our journeys. We have a lot of passions, we have a lot of dreams that we wanted to chase, but we ended up in a particular path. And your journey, your experiences, and the insights you shared today really helped us think that, it is important to have your steady career, but if you have a dream you want to chase, you can definitely take those risks, but also be aware, be cautious that these are the challenges that are there. It's not like everything is, I mean, there's nothing like free lunch, right?
Yeah.
So your journey and your insights really helped us think that way. So thanks a lot for sharing your journey, sharing this inspirational thoughts, Sowmya. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So I will open the floor for questions. So let's hear from the audience.
That's great. Thank you, Samini and Soumya. We have received a few questions here on Zoom. I'll read some of them out for you. The first one is from Janani, who has said that she has followed your writing for years and she's always wondered, have you faced any challenges or criticism in addressing gender stereotypes in your writing? And if you have, how have you managed to overcome them?
Yes, all the time. So I also write from a personal perspective, as in I share personal stories from my own life when I'm writing about gender, feminism, and so many other things, because I feel that really hits home for many women when I talk about myself and my growing up years. So the first opposition has often been from my family, because they've been like, why do you want to write all this? You're writing for a wider audience. Why do you want to, go and put all this out there? But over the years, they've grown used to it, because I've often told them that as a writer, life is my material. So I cannot withhold my experiences from my readers. When it comes to writing about cinema and gender stereotypes, like I told Saumini, there has been a lot of opposition to that. Uh, Female film critics in general get abused a lot more than male film critics. The general assumption is that women don't know what they're talking about. Women don't understand cinema. They don't know about enough about the craft. They're only going to yak on about politics, as if the politics of a film is somehow divorced from its craft. So people are not interested in listening to your opinion. That's what they want to drill into your head. So I have definitely received a whole lot of these kind of responses. But as I told Saumini, I have also found a lot of female readers through my writing. The majority of people who were reading my reviews on the News Minute were women. We could see that through Google Analytics. So that was something that gave me a lot of confidence. And I felt very happy about it, to be talking to a female audience.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Jalini has another question for you, where she has said that she's read some of your books to her kid, which, for example, Kalpana's Cycle, and it could have been any gender, but she finds the hero to be a woman mostly. Is it something you do consciously, or is it something that just comes naturally to you?
It's both. I'm very For me, having female heroes is very important because I think representation really matters. And I feel in the Enid Blyton books that I grew up reading, it was always the boys who were doing the active things. And George, she had to dress like a boy and behave like a boy for her to be adventurous. Whereas the other girl was always cooking or doing, not that there's anything wrong with cooking, but that gender division was so obvious in those books. And I grew up thinking, so a lot of this conditioning happens without you realizing it, right? So you are seeing these representations around you all the time and you absorb that. So I'll give you a small example. When my daughter was very young, she we were on a flight, on an Indigo flight, and the pilot switched on the mic and spoke, and it was a female pilot. And I said, hey, listen, this is a female pilot talking. And she told me, no, that's the air hostess, because women can't be pilots. Now, this was a child to whom I was constantly trying to break gender stereotypes, but all the flights that she had been on so far had been only male pilots. So she was used to men speaking over the mic, but not a woman speaking from the cockpit. So after that, after we landed, I took the trouble of showing her female pilots in the airport where we had, landed. So you absorb these things whether you want to or not. So for me, having strong women characters, women who talk back, rebellious women, is very important for me to include in my books. And many of the characters in my books are also based on my own childhood experiences. Kalpana Cycle was actually inspired by my own experience of learning to cycle as an adult. So these things, so I naturally tend to make my characters female. So yeah, so it's a bit of both.
Okay, great. That's interesting to know. As you spoke about representation, I think we have another question that kind of ties in with that. It's from YouTube. Um, the comment, wait, I'm going to try to paraphrase it. You mentioned how you include Indian characters in your stories, and that goes to show how representation matters. But the problem arises that certain stereotypes exist around culturally inclined characters. How can a writer make sure to let these, how to not let these stereotypes take over the personality of the character?
Yeah, so that really depends on how authentic a writer is being. Whether they are writing in order to create a certain impression or to create a certain effect, or if that character is realistic to them. Like, to give you an example, I've often been offended by how South Indian characters are represented in Hindi cinema, for example, where they just want to show a South Indian person. They're not looking at that person as a real human being. So that becomes a stock character, right? Where you are just giving certain attributes and you're stereotyping the character in a certain way. But if you look at the character as a genuine person, as a whole three-dimensional person, then the stereotypes will fall away. So that's what I do when I create my characters, whether they're elderly people or whether. So, elderly people also in a lot of our books, the party and the tata, the grandma and the grandpa, they're not doing anything exciting, right? They're just like sitting and watching TV all day. But they are also human beings with lives of their own. They have thoughts of their own. So, delving into your characters and seeing them as real people will help you get past those stereotypes.
That's very true. Thank you. I feel like one stereotype I have personally had to deal with, I think in Bollywood cinema, they show Punjabis to be very like loud and hyper and, oh, lassi and all of that. And that I think that also it becomes a very stock character. I think
Absolutely.
Bollywood does do that with a lot of their characters.
Yes.
We have a question from Hari Priya. It's a bit long, so give me a second to read that out loud. It says, Hi Sowmya, thank you for such an inspiring session. I truly appreciate you sharing your career journey with us. One question that arises when discussing diversity, equity, and inclusion is regarding different perspectives. In the corporate world, we sometimes hear opinions that certain individuals, particularly women, might have been appointed to roles primarily to fulfill the DEI requirements rather than being perceived as genuinely deserving. While it's acknowledged that they may not possess all the required skills initially, there's confidence that they can learn and grow into the role. What are your thoughts on this matter?
I agree. I feel representation really matters, and it's not just for ticking a box. It's because it can shape uh, how your organization thinks. What are the perspectives that are being shared in your meetings? And this is applicable across the board for whatever organization, whatever product or service that you're trying to create. Because who are you creating all this for? Your audience, your consumers also come from diverse backgrounds, right? So for you to be able to think it's not possible for one human being to have all these experiences, and that's why we need people from different cultural backgrounds and people from with different life experiences to be there in that meeting and have a voice. So I feel that there shouldn't be I feel if an organization wants to grow, it should be sensitive towards these needs and requirements. And it's not only to kind of fill seats and to do this problematic thing that everybody is talking about now, or you'll be called out for it. No, I think genuinely people need to see the benefit of having more voices in the organization.
Great. That's Thank you. Think the next question we have from Sahana Narayan, who has asked, what measures can women in role of wife and mother take to create space, time, and energy for self-care?
Yes. So I would say that as a wife and a mother, I feel the first thing is that you need to make people in your home understand that your work is important for you and that your self care is also important for you. And for them to understand it, you have to demonstrate that for yourself. So you have to prioritize it first. Don't wait for people to do it for you. So if you want to take a walk, if you want to go to the gym, if you want to go to the spa, if you want to take a vacation by yourself, put your foot down and do it. So there will be some kind of pushback. There might be. But eventually people will understand why this is important for you, especially your children. I'm somebody who has worked from home for so long. And there was a time when my child was very young and she would keep coming into the room to interrupt me. But I made her understand that this is important for me. It's important for me to write. This is my time. This is my space. And at this time, you cannot disturb. So, reiterating that message and also how that benefits her. I told her, look, I work, I earn, and it is through that that we also pay our bills. It also benefits you. So she understood that message from a very young age, and she never used to interrupt me after that. And I have done vacations with my friends. I have, I take time out, like even my movie watching, which has now become my career. That was something I did after I got married and I had a child also. I took time off to go and do things that were important for me. And especially if you, okay, whether it is a girl or a boy, I think it is important for them to see their mother doing this so that they associate this with as a positive quality. So that's how you're going to build a better world also. Now, when it comes to a spouse, there can be friction, there can be, unpleasantness at home. But if you want an equal marriage, I think you also need to be able to negotiate these things with your partner. Make them understand why it is important. And it's not just boys who need to have their boy time out. You also need me time and you need time to hang out with your girl buddies. So it's very difficult for women to make plans. Whenever I plan to meet with my girlfriends, there's always like two people canceling because something has happened. Something at home has happened and they need to cancel. This is constantly happening. We all know it. And that's because we don't prioritize ourselves enough. That our right to leisure is very important. And I think that it should begin with us if we want to see other people respecting
I've locked my family in the room so that I can make this session happen.
Yeah.
That's great. We have another question from Janani where she has asked, have you always been able to call out stereotypes that you saw and faced? Or has there ever been a situation where you weren't able to call out a stereotype that you were seeing in front of you or faced personally?
So from my childhood, I've been pretty vocal about this. I think it's because I grew up with a brother and I didn't know any feminism or anything, but I knew that it was not fair to ask me to clean the table while he was let off that job. It was a gendered, division of labor at my home, and I found that unfair, and I used to question why they were doing that. So I've always had this thing within me that so I was always like boiling with with a lot of questions about the world around me. But it's a good question to ask, have I ever not questioned it? Yes. When I got married and it was I was just forming new relationships, you know that people come at you with a lot of opinions and thoughts, and they expect you to do a whole lot of things. At that time, yes, I did keep quiet for certain situations where I felt that it wasn't time for me to speak. But it's not that I gave in. I pushed back, but I bided my time and I pushed back when I felt it was when I felt that I confident enough in my new relationships for me to make that pushback. So I would say it's not possible for you maybe to always and always vocalize your displeasure or your disagreement, but even for you to acknowledge it within yourself that this is not okay and what is happening is unfair. I think that itself is a very important change that women can make for themselves. And when they are confident about voicing that out, they should.
Very true. Okay, thank you. We have another question from Facebook. As a journalist, what is your opinion on citizen journalism?
Well, citizen journalism is a positive thing, I would say, because it gets viewers involved, and you develop a sense of community and a sense of ownership over what sort of stories are being told in the media. And the media today is very heavily influenced and very, I wouldn't say it's a very impartial media. So a lot of the times, stories that need to be told are forgotten, they are ignored. So I think citizen journalism brings the focus back on issues that really matter to people on ground.
That is very true. Thank you. That leads me to ask a question, like from my own end. How trustworthy is the news in today's day and age? Considering there are influential people with power and money who can control it at least to a certain extent.
I think the media today is in a kind of unprecedented crisis. So there is a lot of influencing happening. Society itself, I feel we are on, opinions are very polarized. How we look at politics, how we look at our everyday lives. People have lost friends and family over disagreements on political issues and which party you support. And of course, the media has played a huge role in this. What the media tells you every day sets the narrative. And this is obviously controlled by big businesses and corporates. So I worked for an independent media house, a small independent media house based in Bangalore. And I've seen them standing up to so much pressure to give in, not talk about a story or to sideline a certain kind of story. So it's not easy being a journalist in today's climate. There was a time when the profession of journalism was highly respected. But now people call you all kinds of names, from prostitute, and they just accuse anyone of taking money and being influenced. But there are a lot of honest, hardworking journalists who are uh, out there doing their jobs and trying to reach people. So there are two sides to the media as well.
I think the journalists who are trying to do that are facing a lot of backlash because they're trying to
Yes.
be honest and true. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
Okay, so we have Lekha who's trying to. Okay, I'm going to read this out. This will maybe take me a few minutes. Um, okay, hey Sowmya, it was absolute pleasure hearing you talk about various topics. I thoroughly enjoyed this session as your thoughts resonated with my thoughts, although I never thought of writing them. I spend a lot of my time talking to myself about a lot of issues that I strongly believe in. I also managed to direct films in my head with me as the main protagonist, but I often just wish I was a writer. I haven't read any of your books yet, would love to someday. My question is, have you written any books for children to have courage to accept themselves irrespective of gender, sexuality, situations, life circumstances, and turn them into your strength and to never compare yourselves with others?
Yes. So my Mayil series is a growing up and coming of age series. There are three books in the series. So the book deals with a lot of these things. I've also written picture books which are on self-acceptance. My first picture book with Tulika is called Anna and Chena, and it's about this elephant who does not like how he looks. So this was inspired by my own body image issues while I was growing up. Right from picture books for very young children to novels, many of my books do address these issues because these are issues that I've struggled with, myself. And as I said earlier, I wish there had been books back in the day to talk to me about those things. So this is something that I do try and incorporate in my writing whenever I can.
That's great. Thank you. Janani's sent in another question saying thank you. She asked that question about being able to take a stand against stereotypes, um, because she has always been able to do that in an environment that was familiar to her and not new. And she's not been able to do that very easily in a new environment. She needs the closeness or comfort for her to be able to challenge the bias. So do you have any tips to how to be able to do that in an environment that is new and not so comfortable to you?
So it depends on why you want to challenge this bias at that particular time and how important it is for you and what you think the reception to your question will be. So, uh, if you feel, often what happens is that when you talk about bias or when you talk about some form of discrimination that's happening, people can view you as being antagonistic because you're questioning a certain norm when they expect you to conform to it. So who are you speaking to? If it is an elderly person, somebody who is like 60 or 70 and who has lived with this as their belief system all their life, are you going to be able to break that belief system with your one question? And what are you hoping to achieve through that? So if this is a person that you're going to interact with on an everyday basis and whose belief system is going to be a problem for you, then yes, I would say you initiate that conversation and make them think about it rather than telling them that they are wrong. Because nobody likes to be told that they're wrong in their face, especially if they're old and they believe that they know more about life than you do. So, in such a situation, I would say that you make them arrive at that conclusion by themselves by asking questions about their own life because they would have also faced this bias. They would have also faced this discrimination at some point in their life. And then you make them think and you make it clear that you're not adopting an antagonistic view towards this. If it is somebody who's of your equal age and with whom you can have an equal conversation, then by all means go ahead and do that. If it's a younger person, teach them to think for themselves. Ask them, encourage them to think and ask questions. So, for instance, in my daughter's school, they had this Christmas party for which the teacher wanted all the girls to wear frocks and gowns, and she said the boys could wear whatever they wanted, shorts and pants. And my daughter was very unhappy with this because she does not like to wear frocks and gowns, and her friends also did not want to wear this. But that's what the teacher said. So she asked me what to do, and I said, "See, you have to deal with this problem in your school. Now, I cannot come to the class and explain this to your teacher. So, if you choose to wear this dress, then also think about how you're going to talk to your teacher about it." So then I believe all these girls sat down and they had this discussion on, what they were going to tell their teacher, and they all wore whatever they wanted, shorts, pants, whatever. And then the teacher did ask them, and they said it's because it's easier for us to play in this. So we have to spend the whole day, in this dress, and this is what is comfortable for us. And they won that battle with the teacher. So I feel that when you stand up to somebody, or when you're questioning somebody, you need to see who you're talking to and what is your purpose in talking to them. And I feel this is best achieved when we are in a calm state of mind, when we have gotten over our immediate sense of outrage. Because when we speak in anger, we only speak to argue. We speak to win an argument. We are not trying to change the mindset of the other person. So I feel we should reach a calm state within ourselves before we address these issues.
That is very sound advice. Thank you. Um, for the last question of today's session, I want to ask, what excites you about the future of writing?
About the future of writing, well, I would love to do more and more books. I want to write for more for adults. I have written 2 books for adults, but I want to do more of that. And I haven't had enough time with my current work schedule. But I do want to make more time for that going ahead. There are a couple of ideas that I'm toying with for speculative fiction. And yeah, I want to explore those. I'm quite excited about it. And I hope to be, able to write that soon.
I'm sure you will. Okay. Thank you, Sowmya, for this wonderful session. Thank you, Soumini, also for facilitating the whole session and asking great, insightful questions to Sowmya. Just give me a second.
Thanks for your time, Sowmya. It's
Thank
wonderful
you.
catching up with you.
Yes.
And I'm sure the audience enjoyed this interaction.
Thank you. I
Sure.
definitely hope so. Yeah.
Um, we have enjoyed having you with us, Sowmya. As I said, it's been a complete pleasure. We really appreciate you sharing your valuable time and insights with us. Please accept this certificate of appreciation on behalf of the Product Leaders Forum and the Institute of Product Leadership. The QR code on the certificate will actually take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page that's been created for you with the recording of this session. We will also be sharing the recording of this session on our YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sowmya and Soumini. Okay, great. Before we wind up, the time has come for Sowmya to choose the best asked question during today's session. The person who wins the best asked question will win a free digital learning course from the Institute of Product Leadership. So I think you can access all the questions if you go to the Q&A section and the answered part.
Yeah. I liked the question on how do you voice your disagreement in a new environment. I think that was Janani's question.
Yes, that was
So I think
Janani's.
that's something that a lot of us struggle with, and something that I have struggled with personally myself for a number
Yeah.
of years before arriving at a certain strategy.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Congratulations, Janani. You've won the best asked question for today's session. I will get in contact with you via email to discuss further details. Okay, great. Thank you guys once again for being here. And to all our attendees, thank you for giving us your time. I'm sure you've had an insightful and productive time at today's session. Get ready for more such valuable sessions. Our next session is on Thursday evening by the amazing Miss Sirisha, who is the Senior Principal Product Manager at Paytm, where she will delve into unraveling myths that exist around women's professional and personal lives and how one doesn't have to choose one or the other and can actually manage to balance it all by sharing her own journey. Yeah. As mentioned before, the most exciting element of this summit will be our in-person conference that will take place on the 7th of April, which is a Sunday. Join us to hear from these and many more inspirational women. You can find out more about registering for the conference by clicking on the link in the chat. I want to thank you all once again for being here and giving us your valuable time. I'll wait here to let you go ahead and scan the QR codes on the screen to leave any reviews, feedback, or queries. I'll wait here for a couple seconds so that you can scan the QR code. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's session and how your experience was. So go ahead, scan the QR code and leave a short review. Okay, I think that should be enough time to have scanned the QR code. We've come to the end of today's session. It's been a complete pleasure having you all with us here today. I look forward to hosting you in the upcoming sessions of the Women in Product Summit. On that note, I'll end today's session. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sowmya. Thank you, Samini.
Thank you, Sowmya. Thank you all.